So everyone is very welcome to today's Future You session. We have two guests today that we're very excited to have. The point of this session really is just to sort of help you guys explore the various elements of what's going to make up your professional online presence and like your online footprint and stuff in this ever-changing world of work. And at the end, we're going to talk a wee bit more about building your digital profile with Rachel. So hopefully from the session, you're going to learn how to present yourself in the most professional light and just discover how to make your online presence have the greatest impact possible for you moving forward. So the first guest that we have today is James, and James is the owner and founder of Rapid, which is one of Northern Ireland's fastest growing digital marketing agencies. So James, I'll hand over to you now and we can speak to Rachel after. So if you're happy enough.
Yeah, perfect. No, thank you very much. And hard to believe we're sitting here again doing this talk for the week with the University of Ulster. It's great to be online with you all, and thanks for taking the time to listen to some thoughts that hopefully can benefit you all. So yeah, just to reiterate there, I'm I'm James. And I'm the founder there of Rapid Agency. And today, I suppose we just want to dip our toe into the water of, building a personal brand, the do's, the don'ts, the musts. I suppose I'm coming from the angle of doing it for a creative industry, but for all industries, how to build up a brand and how to be noticed by employers and people who would be of influence, I suppose. So we want to look at building your brand for the creative and other industries. This is just buffering, so I'll keep a wee eye on hitting these slides. It'll be a bit quicker if we're taking time to load in there. But yes, we are a digital marketing agency. We've about 50 retained clients, so clients that we do work each month for, ranging from shopping centres, retail parks, hotels, cafes, clients in manufacturing, and clients in like food production as well. So we would look after all of their social media management, their campaign design, and just recently, once we've sort of got into the last week of June, we've started to be prepping Christmas, which is just crazy, but it seems every year it happened a week earlier. I suppose everything's opened up now post-COVID, which is fantastic. So we're working on Christmas for clients in June. So it's sort of this type of industry sort of wrecks Christmas for you because you're working on it about 6 months of the year in advance. But we're a young agency. We're based on Adelaide Street there behind City Hall. And I have a team now of 11, soon to be 12 employees. And I sort of want to just take you through a wee bit of, I suppose, my journey in the industry, what I would look for within the industry, and I suppose tips to give you. So starting off here, I want to just highlight a few things here in terms of specialize, don't generalize. So we often get a lot of CVs through and communication through from graduates who are looking to potentially apply for a job that we're maybe looking to fill. And what I'm always looking for is somebody that specializes in something rather than somebody that can do everything. And the reason for that is because we've built up a team now of people who really niche down into doing one particular thing. So whenever I started the agency back in 2015, 2016, we were doing all sorts of stuff, and it was a real mumbo jumbo of things thrown in together. And I often queried, do customers actually really fully understand what we do? That's my very first business card there, like the very first mock-up of whenever that logo was done. And you can see there at that time, the agency was called Rapid Marketing. We rebranded to Rapid Agency, but it was Rapid Marketing back then. And You can see there was a tagline: digital education and digital content management. You know, it doesn't really mean anything, you know, like nobody, what is digital educate? Does that mean that, you know, I'm giving people some sort of educational qualification, or digital content management? What type of digital content management are we offering there? You know, is it web? Is it IT? Is it IT support? You know, as soon as somebody throws digital in front of something, it can mean a whole host of things. So we had no real niche. Back in 2016, there was a wee bit of confusion about what we really wanted to do. So then, skip a few years, sort of worked through that in our heads, and created a bit more of a defined mission statement. We also rebranded the logo into a more structured type wave, and there's a black, red, and blue part within the emblem. Each of those colours then stood for a certain sector within marketing. So black was PR, red was design, and blue was marketing. And we sort of then started to streamline and specialise. And that would be a great bit of advice for some of you guys in terms of what are you streamlining into, what industries do you want to streamline into, and what do you want to be known as a specialist for, rather than somebody that can do a lot of stuff, but can you do a lot of things well? So again, part of our rebrand, we coined and trademarked the tagline, "Your marketing agency." That's what we wanted to be known for, was whenever a business came to us, we wanted to be their marketing agency. We wanted it to be an extension to their in-house team. We wanted to be people that they could rely upon for marketing their business. And we really felt that those three words really brought a lot of value and clarity into the business. So I suppose an offshoot of that then, and in terms of determining and defining what you want to be known for, is fully understanding the capability and the exposure that you can be gaining from a proper LinkedIn profile. So I would say over the course of a year, about 10% to 15% of our revenue comes from me being found on LinkedIn. So again, if we were to flip that into the students there, you know, could you be being found, or could there be potential opportunities for you by having a proper LinkedIn profile? So we don't want to see, and as an employer, you never really want to have a look at whenever you're going on to LinkedIn, is going on and seeing somebody's profile photo from the night before, where they've maybe been in Thompson's and they've put a selfie up, or this guy here calling himself down with a couple of cans there. So no more night out photos, please, on LinkedIn. You know, treat it seriously as it is a professional networking environment. And personally, throughout the years, I've continued to define, retune, and update both the business profile account and my personal profile account. So you can see there, we've went to the expense of getting proper professional headshots done. We've got a photo shoot of the team outside our premises, which is a wee bit outdated now. There's a couple of new employees to be added in there, but you can see the gist. I'm trying to showcase that we're a family business. My wife is in the photo. That's our son Perry. So we're trying to show that we're personal, that there's faces behind the brand, there's faces behind the business, that we're approachable, that we're not distant, that we're based in Belfast, that you can see the staff. There's great authenticity. So there's a lot there that can be seen even in just that photo of the staff. Then if you look down onto the bio, then in terms of branding that, you know, I've really quickly told, right, well, I'm the director at Rapid Agency. We do web, we do brand, we do SEO, and we do social media. So again, just really clear who I am, where I'm working, and what I specialise in. And those are the type of things, even when we're looking for employees, I'm just looking for real clarity in terms of what this person can do, where they've worked before, and what they hope to achieve going forward. Then yeah, so some of that stuff I've touched on: professional headshot and a simple bio. I suppose in terms of giving yourself credibility, it's always recommended, to research your industry. Who are the leading voices? What are the leading agencies at play? What are the leading businesses? What are they interested in? Can you then be tapping into some posts on LinkedIn or some sort of creative writing on your own LinkedIn profile to tap into what those leading voices are also commenting on? And I suppose positioning yourself based upon your content with what other leading voices are talking about. So, for example, at the minute within digital marketing, a lot of the leading voices worldwide in terms of digital marketing are talking about talking to customers with empathy, in regards to there's a high cost of living, fees are going up, salaries are maybe not going up at the same rate. We want to talk to customers with a degree of empathy and sympathise with their position and sympathise with the economy at the minute in terms of how they sell their products. So again, positioning yourself in regards to giving yourself credibility and positioning yourself with what the leading voices within your industry are also saying is very important. Thirdly then, and very, very important, and very at large now that everything is back open, is embrace networking. I remember whenever I started the agency back in 2015, 2016, I went to everything going in terms of networking events to, I suppose, meet the people who were present at those events, but also see how they talked about things, see how they approach certain situations, what clients do they have that they were talking about, how did they get those clients, how are they positioning themselves in the market. And again, just learning from people in a networking environment is so important. And as a rule of thumb, what my mentor has always told me is to try and network with people who are 3 years ahead of yourself. So, maybe look at people who have been in a job for 3 years or have graduated 3 years ago. What have they done to try and fine tune and niche down in their careers? And that would be certainly of real good value in terms of learning from them, but also learning from maybe potential mistakes that they made in their graduate journey and turn into getting into employment. So always try to network with people who are a wee bit further down that journey than yourselves. I think then lastly, or just one of the last points then, the amount of, and I'm talking from a creative industry perspective, I suppose here, rather than maybe a more legal or corporate industry, but certainly from a creative industry, if there's people trying to get into creative arts, digital media, marketing, copywriting, branding, please stop sending agencies CVs and portfolios in Times New Roman. You're not writing a university thesis, or I'll maybe come back. I see some of those questions popping in there. I'll maybe come back to them. But what always captures my attention within a CV is, firstly and foremost, how's it designed? That's a very clear point of difference from the get-go, purely from capturing somebody's eye. So as an employer, if we put out a position, we get 60 CVs, think to yourself, how am I going to separate my CV from the get-go from everybody else's? I heard a really good story there from a client, a fashion brand. What font do I recommend? Well, maybe something like Futura or Helvetia or something a wee bit more creative. You know, a lot of the CVs there, Hazel, that we get in would be a lot more design. So it's maybe not even so much about the font, but the overall graphic design or the layout. You know, they maybe have a picture of themselves within their CV as well. But I heard a good story of a client that got a CV through for a fashion brand, and the person that was applying for the job had printed their CV on a piece of denim and posted it in. They ended up getting the job just purely from the creativity that was involved, rather than putting it in an ordinary format. And I thought that was really good in terms of the competition for jobs is so fierce, so intense. You could employ 3 or 4 people for a position because the talent pool is very competitive. So, you know, think to yourself from the get-go, how do I show myself as the pick of the bunch here? And then, you know, define what you've done in maybe your university time, or if you've had some sort of part-time career as well. So again, be creative with your CV as much as possible. Then again, going back to the first couple of points there in regards to LinkedIn, you know, we're getting a lot of CVs through now with QR codes. You scan the QR code, you get taken to their Instagram or their LinkedIn. So again, make it as easy as possible for the employer to find out as much info as possible. I suppose if you're going to go down that route, make sure the QR code works, make sure your LinkedIn's up to date, make sure your Instagram portfolio is a creative portfolio rather than maybe your personal portfolio that has your nights out on it too. So be very careful in terms of what you show your employer, and be very deliberate in terms of showing them the best of you rather than maybe the not so best of you. So that's 5. I'm really conscious of time there. It's coming up to 25 past, but that's a few points that are really practical in terms of implementing into your employment journey and your job seeking journey, in terms of how do you stand out from the crowd, how do you do a bit more professional networking, how do you try to learn from those people maybe 3 years down the line, how do you make your CV stand out, and I suppose making use of the channels and properly utilising a CV, properly utilising an Instagram and a LinkedIn account, or a Behance portfolio if you're more in. A Behance portfolio is a lot of the creative students would use them there in the University of Ulster, in terms of it would be nearly like a website link where you can put down all of your portfolio in sort of a one link. So Behance is a fantastic thing to use in terms of showcasing photography, videography, creative arts, anything like that. And most of them are free to set up as well. So hopefully, Don and Hannah, that was of benefit to the students.
Brilliant,
There's a
James.
number of
Absolutely fantastic. There was just a wee
Great.
quick question there. It really was good. I'm sure Hannah will agree. There are some really key points there, guys, to take away from an employer who is walking that walk in terms of, you know, the whole digital sector there, and being that creative individual. And, you know, being that creative individual, even if it is not within the creative sector, is equally important as well, as James rightly mentioned. James, there's one wee question I picked up on there was, what if I struggled with confidence and the ability to network? What tips do you have? You know, you might have a student that's quite a shy individual, but they're maybe a really strong academic, highly skilled individual, but they just maybe lack that wee bit of. What sort of advice would you, or tips could you give them from your perspective?
I suppose I would maybe, you know, play to your strengths. If you feel that you're maybe better outside of that social environment, then could you work on a list of targets or individuals that you would like to approach and maybe approach them digitally via LinkedIn or via email first. So maybe, then that person should really focus on networking via LinkedIn and, create a really good list of targets. Those could be the people, the MDs or the CEOs or the founders within those businesses that they want to collaborate and see if there's any opportunity with, and then draft up something that would be very well written in terms of an introduction to yourself, and then maybe links to some of your work or some of your experience, and I suppose play to your strengths then, if it would be more prudent to do that sort of networking offline rather than feeling that you have to attend all of those events to do so.
Yes, that's a very valid point, and I'm sure the audience here today will agree that, and would you recommend that the students or the soon-to-be graduates have a responsibility to really, establish themselves digitally and professionally online?
Yeah, well, I think that question leads itself to, we've all been so much more accustomed to doing so much more online. So the fact that you maybe don't want to attend events, well then the world that we live in now post-COVID certainly lends itself to building a more online presence of yourself. So I would certainly take that seriously, and even whenever we go to employ somebody, the first things we look at are their social profiles. You've put them online, and by putting them online, you've put yourself online to be viewed by a potential employer. So take those things very seriously, because they could be the make or break really in terms of if you get the position or not. So make sure your LinkedIn's up to date, make sure your Instagram's up to date. And again, if you've put those channels on a CV, you've put them out there to be looked at, and they will be looked at if they've been presented there. So certainly they're very, very important, and often they can sway whether you get a position or not. That's certainly how I've
Absolutely. So that's a very valuable takeaway there, guys, from James. So your digital footprint is, it is your brand, really. So you need to be very, very mindful and be able to, stand over that. Definitely.
Absolutely. It's building a foundation there for yourself in terms of your CV, your LinkedIn, and your other social channels. What digital footprint do you have as a student, and is it good enough to show an employer? And if it's not good enough to show an employer, well, don't make it really obvious that it's there to be accessible. Or if you want it to be accessible, make sure it's up to date before you send your CV in.
Yes, absolutely. Well, James, that has been amazing. Thank you, Kendra. Does anybody have any final questions for James before he shoots off? It's a real privilege to have the employers on board with us, just to make sure that indeed that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, really. And the fact that James is working with these large players and the food companies and so on, and imagine even preparing work for Christmas is a bit, in our world, it's a wee bit bizarre, but obviously for James it is pretty normal. So and it's so great. Would you not all agree that it's fantastic to have employers like James and his company on board? Yeah, very good. And Rachel is coming on now. James and Rachel. Hannah, do you want to say a little bit about Rachel?
Yeah, well, surely. I just want to acknowledge Hazel's comment there. She's just asking if the recording is going to be available after, and it is. So I'm just going to put the link in there, Hazel, to our YouTube channel, and it's actually Rachel that uploads them. So there you go. So next we have Rachel, who is in her 3rd year of graphic design and illustration. And Rachel's actually a placement student with us here at Employability Careers. I'm sure you'd agree, Donna, we'd be lost without her. So she's going to share her expertise and knowledge on how to create a standout digital portfolio and hopefully show some of her work as well. So that's you, Rachel.
Hi everyone. I was about to introduce myself there, but I've already been sorry. There we go. So today I'll be mainly talking about tips and tricks for your portfolio, how to make your portfolio stand out. Quick disclaimer, the portfolio examples and kind of tips I'm showing are mainly based around like creative portfolios and like mainly design based. I've tried to keep it kind of generic to different creative industries, but hopefully other sectors can get something out of this as well. If you have any wee questions, just pop them in the wee chat and I'll happily answer them towards the end there. So let's see. So first I'll be talking about like the different types of portfolios that you could encounter or that you could use. So, and also it's important to remember to check what type of portfolio would be required from you in a job application or from employers, because sometimes they'll ask for different types of portfolios. So firstly, we've got our website or our online portfolio. I've tried to use platforms that usually have like a free plan or a free trial plan to show your portfolio. So the likes of Adobe Portfolio, Squarespace, Wix, WordPress, they're really good for online portfolios. Adobe Portfolio would be good as well because with the uni, you can get a free Adobe account while you're studying at Ulster University. And you can link that to your Adobe account. You can also link it to your Behance account as well. So I find Adobe Portfolio very handy, and that's the one I usually use for my portfolio. So for a website portfolio, it's easy to update regularly. You can always rejig it if you want to change your style or if you feel like your work's changed. It's easy to share as well. You can always pop a link into an email if you're emailing an employer. You can put it on your socials. It's very good for networking. And it's also, I find it's a lot more interactive for employers because you can easily put video content on there, animations, you can like play about with the user experience and make it a really kind of interesting experience for the employer looking at your work. So this would be an example of my web portfolio. I use Adobe Portfolio. And then a quick tip as well, I learned this from my tutor actually. When you're making your web portfolio or designing it, make sure that it is okay with different screen sizes. So for instance, it might look great on desktop, but I find sometimes it might look a bit awkward on your phone or on a tablet, text-wise or image-wise. So always just double check that it looks okay on different screens. See, social media. This isn't necessarily a portfolio, so to say, but it's a great way to showcase your work or to showcase yourself. Thanks to James, by the way, because he gave some excellent tips on how to showcase yourself on social media and online. So popular platforms would be like Instagram, Behance. You'll find I'll say about Behance about 10 times in this PowerPoint, so apologies. LinkedIn, Tumblr is quite good for creative industries as well. TikTok is becoming quite popular too, especially for like the short form video content. It's very good for showcasing your work, especially video and animation work. Twitter as well. It's once again like the website, easy to keep updated and fresh, and it's good for networking. It could also generate a good reach and a good following depending on what kind of trends you follow or what your work is. And you can easily show like different forms of media all in one place. So I find social media is like a great thing to have, especially with creative industries. So this would be examples of, I would have a TikTok account and an Instagram account as well. And there's my Behance portfolio. I think I'd already mentioned, but you can link it to your Adobe portfolio, so it makes it really easy to share work across both of them. And you can link it to your LinkedIn as well, as far as I know. And then lastly, this one isn't really often used anymore, but so I've seen some people have a small printed version of their work, particularly at the degree shows in the art college there. Some people have like a small booklet format of their work, and you can easily like flick through their portfolio. It's good to have it in person networking events, but you don't always have to have it. And lastly, this is the one I'm mainly going to cover in the next few slides here. This would be like your PDF or like slideshow type portfolio. You'll commonly get this in like job applications. You'll need to attach it to a job application, or if attach it via an email or whatnot. It is good for if in some interviews you'll be asked to present parts of your portfolio, so it's good for presenting. and you can also link it to your LinkedIn or your website. In the LinkedIn featured section, you can include the PDF of your portfolio. I recommend doing that because it means as soon as someone clicks on your LinkedIn, they can like flick through your portfolio. So that's a handy thing to have. So I will be covering kind of portfolio layout, like sizing, what to include, just some general kind of tips. Sorry, by the way, if I'm going through this too quickly. If you need me to go back and talk over anything in more detail, just let me know. So first of all, sizing and length. Short and sweet works best. I would say roughly 15 to 20 pages. Try and keep it on the shorter end of that, because a lot of employers are going to be flicking through lots and lots of portfolios, and they might not have time. They might not want to sit through like a 20, 30 page portfolio. So keep it short and sweet. You have a small number of pages to make an impression. So just showcase what you feel most confident in and what you feel is your best work. In terms of sizing, I usually see 1920 by 1080 pixels. That's a common size that's used. It's like the kind of screen size. Once again, I would double check requirements on like specific applications and make sure that it fits with the requirements. And try and keep the file size under about 10 megabytes. This will make it easier for employers to view, and it's easy to attach in emails, and it's just generally a lot quicker to view. So first things first, this is the kind of stuff that you'll want to put first in your portfolio. I'm probably stating the obvious here, but your title, so your name, kind of what you specialize in, so if it's graphic design or any other sector you're in, some of your contact details as well if you want, a contact page, and then your biography or a wee about me section. You can also put, if you have a logo, like if you're a graphic designer or an illustrator and you have a logo, you can put that on, or you can even put like the dates of the work that you're featuring. So for instance, like, oh, this is work from 2018 to 2020. It's honestly up to you or what you feel looks best. So this would be what the front page of my portfolio would look like, on the contents page. So for the biography and about me section, try and keep this relatively short, around 100 words, maybe a bit more, a bit less. Include like some general info on who you are and your creative approach. So maybe like your name, like what your specialty is, maybe where you studied, and then with your creative approach, like who influences you, like what do you specialize in, what do you want to specialize in the future. Kind of showcase how you think and kind of what creatively interests you. And then as well, if you've any awards and achievements, don't undersell yourself in this bit. Like if you have something to boast about it. It's a chance to kind of introduce yourself and showcase that there's a person behind the work. You're not just a designer, you're not just an artist, or in any other sector, you are a person first. So what makes you, you? You can also show a picture of yourself if you're comfortable doing so. I find that helps kind of with the relatability. It shows that there's a person there. So this would be what my about me section would be like. Probably didn't follow the 100 word thing myself, so I would advise keep it a wee bit shorter. And you can put your contact details here as well if you don't want to put it on the front page. So in terms of imagery, this, once again, sorry, this is more like creative portfolio wise or design portfolio wise, but try and make this the most dominant feature of your portfolio. Don't be scared to like give your images breathing space. I know it's tempting to like show a lot of your work in one page and to showcase as much as you can, but let the work speak for itself. Let the employer be able to digest your work. So make sure certain things work well, the images, like your background color and your text. And then use mockups as well. You can get mockups on the likes of Behance, Graphic Burger and stuff. They have great free mockups. So they do. I just feel like it shows your work in a lot more interesting way. And it shows kind of, once again, this is more design based, but it shows how your work would be applied in the real world and stuff. And it gives them an idea of how your work might look if you work for them. So this is examples of how I laid my work out in my portfolio. Word of advice, I mainly use black in my background, but I would switch it up a wee bit, or like use like white or off-white, or with some of the bigger images just to make it breathe a wee bit better. Like for this one, for instance, don't be scared to put like one image on a page, like one large image. But yeah, I probably would have switched the background color on this because I did apply for a job and they says that like maybe use other colors to give the images breathing space. Typography, so I use clear, legible type that doesn't overpower your work, it just complements your work. That being said, you can find a typeface that suits the style of your work or that kind of reflects your personality without overpowering your work. Try and use like hierarchy in your headings and your text and stuff as well, like really make it dynamic. Try and keep the text itself minimal, so even just like a brief description of your projects, like what the brief was and how you came to that conclusion. You don't need to have a lot to show what your creative process is or how you think. Keep it short and sweet, and then double check the sizing and spacing, particularly in like the body text, because it's easy to slip up on like even typos and stuff. So you don't want the employers looking at your portfolio like that and being like, how do you read this? So this would be example. I had like wee title pages between each one because it was graphic design and illustration. Then using like hierarchy and wee small bits of text. There's the use of mockups as well. And there's a wee bonus tips. So I would advise look for inspiration. Like at the end of the day, any creative work, it isn't created in a vacuum. There's nothing wrong with looking for inspiration or ideas. I would check out sites like, once again, Behance, Pinterest, Instagram, even like looking at books and magazines, or even like when you're walking around, you can get inspiration and ideas. You'll be surprised where you find it. But yeah, I suggest looking at that. It can be a bit daunting seeing other people's portfolios when you're starting out and being like, oh gosh, like this looks like so much better than what I had in mind. Like, but you'll get there eventually. The idea process is quite important, and it takes a bit of trial and error. This one deserves kind of almost a slide itself. Asking for feedback. It is quite scary putting your work out there, especially for criticism. But I always say this: constructive criticism or constructive feedback is like the best way to learn and improve. So I would ask your peers in your course, your tutors, anyone you can for feedback, because sometimes you need that fresh pair of eyes or that fresh perspective, because you'd be surprised how much slips through the net, especially when you're looking at a project for a while. So I would suggest looking for feedback there. Keep editing and updating. So even when feel like you have your final portfolio, keep coming back to it, keep editing it, because it's always important to have it fresh. Keep adding new work to it. Even from the editing standpoint, keep making sure there's no typos or mistakes or whatnot, because you'll be surprised how much you miss out on. So common ones I find is mainly like typos or wee things like your page numbers, like the spacing in that, or some things being misaligned. It's easy done, and I wouldn't be too hard on yourself on it, but yeah, let's see. Cover a range of areas. So once again, this is more kind of creative based, but if you're a designer, try and showcase a lot of things like branding, maybe some typography, maybe some video or After Effects stuff. Try and keep it broad and show your whole skill range. I know sometimes you might not have a lot of like in that range of work, so you might be lacking some branding projects or you might be lacking some video projects. So I'd suggest trying to create your own brief or use different websites. There's a lot of like websites out there where you can generate a brief and complete your own wee side projects if you need to, or if you have time to, so you can get a broader kind of range of work. And then lastly, even use tutorials. If there's a certain idea you come up with and you're not sure how to execute it, look it up on YouTube. LinkedIn Learning is fantastic as well. You can get that for free with your uni account. It's great because don't let it stop you from wanting to try something new or wanting to showcase yourself in a really interesting and dynamic. Yes. I think that is it. Thank you very much, guys. I'm sorry I proper whizzed through that, but if you have any questions, just pop them in the wee chat there, or if you even think of something later or need some advice or whatnot, feel free to contact me at my email or give me a wee DM on Instagram or whatnot. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys.
Rachel, thank you very, very much indeed. That was just amazing. It really was so
Thanks,
good.
Rachel.
I just have a wee query. Sorry, I'm a bit of a doubting Thomas. Rachel, as you know, Rachel and I have worked together for a year now. Rachel, for the group of students that's on here today, if you don't mind me asking or to get some clarity around this question, the majority of students may not necessarily be coming from that creative space, okay? Or like myself there, coming from a business background, etc. So we don't have necessarily that sort of the creative ability as such. But what we do know is, and the majority of us know, and as you rightly pointed out there, that you pick up ideas and from magazines, from billboards in the street to businesses, the TV ads, etc., etc. But for the typical student that's not that skill set in mind, what I suppose what I'm trying to ask you is here, to get their brand out there in terms of employment, what would you suggest?
I would mainly suggest, once again, using the likes of LinkedIn or social media to get yourself out there.
Okay.
Networking would probably be very, very important in terms of if you wanted a portfolio, like outside of the creative industry, in terms of portfolios or CVs or cover letters, hold it at the point of really selling yourself and selling your skills, and not like don't try to be too humble or short sell yourself in the worry of becoming looking too overconfident. Like if you have an achievement, showcase it. If you have a skill set that you're proud of, showcase it. Because at the end of the day, employers are going to be looking at this work, but they've probably looked at lots of other stuff beforehand, and you want to show, well, how can I be different, and how can I showcase me and what makes me stand out from everyone else. So that would be my kind of main tip for that.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. I love your style there, Rachel. I really, really do. And I'm sure there are any other questions in the group here today, but I think the examples you've provided there for your portfolio and for the creative sector has been really, really excellent. Very thorough. Thank you for sharing.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Rachel.
No problem. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? Either James, Rachel, or myself, or Hannah? Feel free. This is your moment here, and there's honestly, as Hannah was saying to me earlier, there's no such thing as a silly question or a bad question. I genuinely mean that. Anything anybody would like clarified, or is everybody happy enough? We'll see who's on the channel here. Beatrice, did you enjoy that session there in terms of digital communication? And to see Evie there. Yep, no problem, Evie. You're very welcome, Evie. And I mean, students, I'm sure you probably would agree with me here, Rachel. Students use portfolios for many different methods. For example, I do know that the likes of students are starting their own businesses, for example, and then maybe deciding to do a postgraduate and teacher training, would create a short business portfolio to present at the PGCE interview, for example, and that's always very, very nice. So these tips here would be very useful to support the students going forward. Lovely, that's great, Mohammed. Certainly will do. Yeah, we'll have a little look at that. That's great. And connect up with James. That's a great opportunity there, or Rachel, on either LinkedIn or Instagram, because it is good. Both James spoke about it, Rachel spoke about it, the importance of networking, or reach out to myself and Hannah as well. It's very, very, very important to network. It really is. Okay. Thanks a million, James. Brilliant. James has his information up there. It was great to have you on board. It really was. Any other questions before we finish off today, guys? Or is everybody happy? Brilliant, James. Thanks a million. It's great to have the employer on board as well. It really, really is. You know, that's great.
There's a wee question there from
Oh,
Beatrice.
sorry, Beatrice.
I'm trying to get involved in science journalism after completing a bachelor's in biology. What type of things could I do to further promote myself out of networking? So what level of networking have you done, Beatrice? Have you connected with people in that field already? You can put your mic on also if you want.
Yeah, please feel free. Oh, who was that? Sorry, who was that? Who was posing the question there, Hannah?
Beatrice. So she's just saying
sorry,
I've been dabbling on LinkedIn. Let's see.
Okay. And I've got involved on Twitter as well. You see, this is what I think. This is where the wee bit of the problem lies, Beatrice. And I can totally I can totally respect this. I was talking to James about this earlier. I think because if you're not in the sort of the techie, the creative industries, right, as many of us are not, that's absolutely fine. I think then there's this barrier of fear sits in that, oh, I can't do this, or, is my LinkedIn account good enough, or is my Instagram. I think, is that what you're getting at there, Beatrice? Because we've really, all of us, yourself, you're very, very right there. We have been sort of dabbling with LinkedIn, and we have been dabbling with, and so on. Nobody has really taken us and said, right, this is a really strong LinkedIn pro. Does that make sense, James?
Yeah, it does, and it's a good question. I suppose, you would need to flip that question on its head and look at where are your audience, or where are your potential employers hanging out? Like, if they're not hanging out on Twitter, or if they're not hanging out on LinkedIn, there's no point of you hanging out on LinkedIn either. So, like,
yes,
are they in more academic forums, or is there networking events, or is there activities specifically for that type of science academics? Where do they live at online, and then look at creating your content on those forums and on those platforms.
Brilliant. That's a brilliant, Hannah. That's very useful, because we do have a wee bit of a challenge, should I say, in terms of reaching out to the students. So that's a good point to take away there today, James. So we, where are our students hanging out, for example? So we have to get onto those platforms that they're actively involved in.
Exactly. Beatrice, I think as well, if you try to find even at least a few people in that sector already, may it be LinkedIn or elsewhere, and just sort of watch them, see what they're doing and what their profiles look like, and build that network further. Like on my LinkedIn, I have people that work in employability and careers in a number of different universities, and I just sort of engage sometimes with what they're engaging with, just because it's interesting to me as well. So I think building up your feed on your LinkedIn as well is crucial, and you can have a look and see what the others are doing, and reach out and ask them a question if you want to.
Yeah, and even like I've typed in there science journalism into LinkedIn, and there's 111 results for 111 groups on LinkedIn related around science journalism. So they're obviously not all based in Northern Ireland, but it's niching down into that way, in terms of just starting really basic. I typed in science journalism into LinkedIn. There's 111 groups, so there's thousands of people in those groups. And then what you would do, isn't it Beatrice?
Beatrice,
Yeah, what you would do then is you would look at who's in those groups, go into their profile and look at who they've connected to, and then you would connect with the people that they've connected with, and start to build up bit of a web of a network on LinkedIn that way. So rather than thinking flip where to start, that would be a really good way to start. And you're really snipping around there to see who's connected with who and jumping straight in with both feet in terms of connecting with those people straight away.
That's a very good call,
Exactly.
James.
Yeah.
That is. So, Bittles, I hope that has been a bit of help to you. What did you say? You biology? Yeah. Okay, Bittles, yeah, let us know how you get on, please. Send me a wee email or send Hannah an
Yeah,
email,
sure.
because that's a very good call there. I mean, yeah, totally. Yeah, you know, maybe 3/4 of them might be in the UK based or whatever, but still, I mean, it's that initial connection. Totally. Good, that's brilliant. Was there any other wee questions there? Rachel put in a wee message. Would recommend finding in-person events and stroke activities as well. Handshake, you know, like I mentioned earlier in an earlier session, the likes of Handshake here, these events, these employers events as well. You know, as James said there, this networking is crucial, guys. So it's connecting with either the in-person or indeed the virtual events. Is definitely another sure start as well. Oh, that's great. Lovely. And Hannah
Perfect.
just popped into the link there again, the
Yeah.
handshake link. That's great. All right. Well, listen, I don't think there's anything else. Any other further questions? Thanks very much for that, guys. Well done. Okay, Mohammed, no problem at all. You're very welcome.
Thanks.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Great. Happy days. Lovely. Well, listen, take care, guys, and no doubt we'll see you soon. Thanks, Mohammed.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you now.
Thanks,
Good seeing
James.
you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Rachel. Thanks very much.